Hi, my name is Jennifer Brozost, and this is my partner, Vimmi Shroff.
Hi, guys.
We run a company called PEAS, Private Education Advisory Service, and we are an education company that works with families, helping them with all aspects of their educational needs. This has become increasingly more challenging thanks to COVID. Teens are one of the groups whose lives have been turned upside down. The pandemic, school closures, and uncertainty about the future has asked today's teens to be incredibly resilient and disciplined in their behaviors like never before. We wanted to get a group of teens together to hear their thoughts and feelings on what has been going on in their worlds with regards to high school, college choice and testing, COVID, and the changing leadership in our country. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much for our first Teen Talk. We really, really appreciate it. And we're excited to hear what you have to say. I guess we can start. How has this year been most challenging for you? What has been most challenging? Who wants to start? Shanira, how has this year been most challenging for you?
Great.
It's Shaniri, by the way.
Shaniri.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So to start off, COVID happened, and that was really challenging for me because a lot of members of my family died of COVID, and we weren't able to give them, the proper funeral that they deserved. So for me, it was really hard because it's like, oh my God, my uncle worked so hard. Now he has to just be cremated. What the heck? He doesn't deserve that. So it was really challenging for me at first with that. But as the year went on, I think the most challenging part was just staying organized and making sure I was doing my college applications, writing my supplements, because there was so much going on with the world, police brutality, people were dying, people were homeless, and I was just getting so overwhelmed, especially with watching the news. It was hard for me to focus, and then it's do I complete my college applications and just get it out the way, or do I just pay attention to what's happening in the world right now? So that was really challenging for me personally.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear about that.
Sophia raised her hand. Sophia?
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear about that. I was just gonna say, for me at least, school has been kind of hard to navigate it, because with online school last year, I feel like a lot of teachers, since it was an adjustment for everyone was kind of unsure what was happening and not a lot was expected from people. But now, since everyone had this summer to kind of learn how to use it, I feel like more is expected from students in online school, and it's harder. I feel like it's just hard to meet their expectations because online school presents a lot of difficulties for multiple reasons. And so I've definitely found that to be challenging.
Yeah. Miles, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say it was really difficult to kind of stay on track with all the work that you have piling up, especially as a high school senior. And then as well, I know Shaniri mentioned it, there's a lot of distractions going on, and just to stay locked in on what you have to do and get it done, it's difficult, especially you would think you would have a lot of time to do the things that you have to, whether that's being at home, but it also just kind of puts you in a rut in a way, and it's hard to have the right mindset to be productive. That's what I've struggled with.
Yeah. Matthew, anyone else?
Miles, I absolutely agree. I think that staying on track has been something that's been very hard to do this year. As Shaniri said, there's been a lot of distractions, a lot of things happening. And I think especially, with school being online for a large part, I think, being engaged in class and keeping up with work and all this has been a lot more difficult this year than it's been in past years. So I think that for me, kind of trying to stay on track, as you said, trying to stay focused has been kind of one of the biggest things I've been trying to deal with in COVID.
Allie, anything else?
Yeah, I really just think it's mostly staying on top of work because it's just not the same environment. I know I go in personally every other day, so it's harder to stay focused when I'm at home, in my own room doing my work. And in terms of teachers, some teachers just aren't, I feel being as sensitive to the fact that there is a lot going on and they're assigning so much work and they're just making it harder than I feel it should be.
Yeah.
I also think that, I don't know, I'm a junior, and so I just started adjusting to high school my freshman year, and then I was finally figuring out how to balance everything my sophomore year. And then everything changed, so I had to start to adjust everything and balance everything again. And I just found activities that piqued my interest and something I might be interested in the future. But obviously with COVID and the restrictions, I wasn't able to pursue that in the way that I probably would have liked. So it was hard to figure out how to continue finding things that I'm interested in while also staying safe and like figuring out how to balance everything.
Excellent
What
point.
about you?
Yeah, same here. Like it's hard to stay like as organized as like you normally would when there's like school in person. Like there's no like classroom interactions, so it's never easy, especially like since it's kind of a culture shock to a lot of people. Like it's never happened before.
Absolutely.
What about you, Cervantes?
I feel the same way as Vivon. It's really difficult to manage all the work, and it's hard to manage everything that's going on with online school. And it's also particularly difficult to forge new relationships with teachers and other students, which makes it especially difficult when you have a question or something along those lines.
Absolutely. Sophia, you wanted to say something, and then Alice, if you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just going off of what Tish said, she mentioned like being a junior and how that's difficult. And I know in junior year, that's the big year for like standardized testing, like ACT, SAT. And so that in itself has been hard, just studying and everything surrounding that. But then also, I remember the week I was supposed to take it, I stayed home from school that week because I was so scared of having to be quarantined and like kind of not being able to take the test and losing like the track that I had been going on. And so I just feel like this has added so much stress to an already overly stressful process. And especially I'm a junior, so I haven't been in like the college application process, but from what I've heard, that's also been extremely difficult. And I just think there's so much added stress that just doesn't need to be there, I guess.
Alice, did you want to say anything?
Yes, and like Natasha said, going from freshman year and sophomore year when you just start to figure things out straight to junior year, I was really excited to pursue a lot of my passions. And over Zoom, like a lot of art classes or engineering and design classes can't really be taught well over Zoom unless it has an online interface. So you lose a huge aspect of like the physical design and creative component.
Wow.
Thing.
Yes, go ahead.
Can go before I add something.
Of course.
Oh yeah, I think also for me as well was not being able to like tour colleges. Like that really stressed me out a lot because it's like, okay, like am I applying to colleges just because like they have my major, you know? Because when you tour a college, like you really feel it, and it's like this is where I belong.
Absolutely.
And yes, the virtual tours were super amazing as well, but like for me, I need that in person. Like I need to be in the environment. I need to see the people. I need to see the different facilities. So that was really challenging as well. And then it's like, oh my God, did I make the right decision on where I applied to?
No, I understand that because you need to actually be in the environment. You need to feel it. It's like you get that feeling when you get in the right place, like, oh, this is home. And yeah, you don't get to do that. What, if you all had to think about, what is something that happened that really surprised you about yourselves? Anyone who wants to start? Something you learned about yourself that maybe really surprised you?
I can start for this one. Whenever I was in school, I was always like, I wish I had more free time. Like I need more free time. But then I had a quarantine and I had nothing but free time. And I realized that something I actually value is productivity and being busy, which that is obviously surprising because I feel like as a kid, all you want is to have free time to hang out with your friends and stuff. But I don't think that's who I am. I need to like have something to do at all times during the day. Otherwise I can't function. So that was something that surprised me.
Very good point.
Awesome point. Ali, you had raised your hand.
Yeah, I was actually going to say something similar to what Natasha said. I learned that I'm organized, but when I have too much time, I'm not as organized as I think I am because I'm not coming home from school every day and like doing my work. I had hours on end to do whatever I wanted. I would just sit in my room instead of being productive and doing things I should have been doing.
Yeah, I find that. I find when I'm more busy, I get more things done. And I think this definitely shows that. Anyone else? Yeah, Matthew, just jump right in.
Yeah, I agree. I think kind of a big change that we've had, I think to Natasha's point, is there's a lot less structure now than we had, a year ago. And I always thought of myself as someone, I like structure, but I thought I was, would have a very easy time doing things without structure, but I found that it is much harder to get stuff done. Also, it's kind of like not just me, but I think in general, I think people are a lot more adaptable than I initially had thought. Like COVID sucks and there's been so many different challenges, but I feel like people have like really found a way to make things work. And I was impressed with this people in general, and how we've been able to kind of adapt as a community to try to just make things easier.
Yeah, jump right in.
One thing that actually I surprised myself was that I'm actually very comfortable with being introverted. Like, I was more outgoing person prior to COVID, but for the first 6 months of COVID, I was doing my own thing. I delved more into like my interests and passions, and I was surprised how much I was distracted by the hustle and bustle of commuting back and forth to school and all that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Sophia, go ahead.
I was thinking something similar that surprised me about myself. I feel like before COVID began, I was kind of always with friends, or just I always wanted to be out of the house and doing something. And I always felt just like kind of cooped up in my room. But I feel like now, since I had that time by myself and I discovered new interests and I discovered how to entertain myself while being alone, I feel like sometimes going into social situations, I obviously love it, but at the same time, I've really begun to realize how exhausting it can also be at the same time. And since I've had that time alone and I've learned how to like entertain myself and how I don't need to be with people all the time, I feel like that's definitely changed my perspective on like the social scene and like being out all the time and like not taking those times I have for myself for granted.
Yeah, I like that, because sometimes the social scene, as much as you want to be a part of it, it's a lot of pressure, right? And this maybe took some pressure off. Anyone else wanted to jump in? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, oh wait, was that me or?
Yeah, go ahead, Miles.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah. So, yeah, one thing I realized was that
Miles, go
I
ahead.
actually need and want school a lot more than I thought I did at first. The idea of virtual learning sounded really cool to me, and like I thought it's a good way to get away from school. I'm gonna have less work, but like in reality, the work has actually been a lot harder. I haven't been getting as much, but like it's still been more challenging. So like I've realized that like I kind of want to return to school more than I thought that I would.
Oh, that's interesting. Miles, you had something to add?
Yeah, similar to Sophia and the whole social scene, what surprised me is how much I kind of adapted to prioritizing myself and my needs over just, I guess, everything else. Because especially like spring into summer, I spent a lot of time trying to get like my mind right, my body right. And that's something I didn't really have time for before. So I was surprised that I had like the wherewithal to do that by myself.
Yes, Amantis.
Go ahead, sweet.
I found like new passions. So I've never been too into coding, but over the pandemic with a lot of extra time, I started to take on and try to learn coding more in depth. And I've actually found it to be extremely interesting. And I created a couple programs and took on new coding projects. I've just found new passions during the pandemic. I think that's been beneficial to myself.
That's awesome. That's great.
I learned about myself that I am really good at sustainable living, because I remember like I started making a garden in my backyard, and I was like, oh wow, this thing is gonna die, and it actually grew, and I was able to like grow tomatoes and stuff. So I never knew that I was actually good at like planting and like transplanting. And I also learned something about my parents, because me and my parents were always busy, so we hang out with each other, but we don't get to really hang out. And like I was able to hang out with them, and like I actually know my parents. Like I thought I knew them, but like now I really know them on a different level. I know their humor. I know like what really gets them mad and what really doesn't get them mad. So that was really cool. And I feel like my parents learned something new about me as well.
I think that is really cool. And I definitely think that I personally had the experience of being able to hang out with my teenage children more, probably more than they wanted to hang out with me, but I really enjoyed that. And I felt lucky that I had that time. Did you feel like that, Vimmi, a little bit?
Oh yeah, I've been enjoying my boys way too much.
Yeah.
Right, Vivon?
What if you have to think, because obviously, there's been a lot of challenging parts of this, ton of challenging parts, but you have to think about your high school experience. What are the things about high school that you really feel like you missed and that make you sad that you really didn't have the opportunity? Yeah, Allie?
I think now, like even from last year to this year, we're missing out on being with everyone and like just the interactions, like not even with your grade, but other grades, because I know I'm only, when I'm in school, I'm only with the people on my cohort. So I'm not with a lot of people and I don't see them because of COVID. We're all like, you know, not having parties or anything every weekend. So we're not seeing a lot of people. So I think definitely the social interaction is something that we're missing in high school.
Sophia?
I think I definitely, kind of going off of that, missed out on like expanding my friendships with people and kind of finding people with different interests that like we find a friendship between, because I know like in past years I've had classes with different people and we've become friends through that and like have formed connections through those things. And I feel like with classes being partially online, that's definitely hard to like form those friendships and those bonds. And then also outside of school, it's kind of hard to see people you're not really friends with because there's such a limited amount of people you can kind of see or socialize with, whatever. And so I feel like I've definitely missed out on like expanding my friendships and expanding my just like who I know within my grade, I guess.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I see it in two ways. One, like, as a student, I feel like I just missed out on kind of capitalizing off of all the academic and social work you put in the first 3 years of high school. Because like senior year, you kind of like want to be at the top, you want to take over, like you just want to like live your life. You're at the top of the world as a senior, and you kind of do all that work like for what, in a way. I know that's like a negative way to think about it, but that's how I felt for a long time. And then as an athlete in the same way, like, you know, you spend all this time in the gym. I play basketball, so like all this time in the gym, working with your team, with your coach, just trying to get that chance to like win a championship or something, and then like you don't even get the chance anymore. It's disappointing, but you kind of have to live with it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about it athletes wise. What grade are you in?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior. Were you looking for colleges to, because I was wondering like how athletics, if you're looking for athletics in college, like how would that happen, because you couldn't play for the past year? That must be incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it definitely was frustrating. You know, as an athlete, your senior season is your biggest season. Like that's where you kind of can put yourself out there and potentially get, you know, looked at by different scouts and things like that. So I know a lot of people miss out on that opportunity, including me. But I don't like to dwell on it too much. But yeah, it was disappointing.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would also say, just talking about athletics, I feel like it's an area and where the social aspect is important because your friends can push you and your teammates can push you. And like I'm on a guys team for crew, and so they're really intense and competitive, and like a lot of how I grow is through them pushing me to get out of my comfort zone and like really stretch out and like try new things within the sport. And so I definitely say that that's an aspect that I'm missing from high school, is just having people there to support me but also to push me.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Matthew.
I was gonna say, I agree. I feel like I kind of realized that there's a lot more to school just besides, you know, getting an education. You know, I think that clubs and sports teams are a huge part of that. You know, there's a lot of social kind of opportunities lost there. But I think also kind of like just like relationship with teachers, something that I really feel like I've really missed out on. I think that there's a lot lost over Zoom, and I mean, you know, you can still learn, well, but I feel like kind of having in-person interactions with your teachers, I think at least for me, it makes a learning experience kind of a lot more meaningful. And that's something that I'm kind of upset that that there's been a lot less of recently.
Yeah, I bet. Anyone else want to jump in? If you start thinking a little bit, I don't know how many of you are thinking, well, some of you I know are thinking about college. How has this affected your decisions about college or your college choice? Has it affected any of you when thinking about college, where you're going to go, what the kind of college? Do you want to go closer, further away? Has it changed any of your thoughts?
Personally for me, I know that I want to go away to college, so it hasn't really changed my thoughts. I think just like the grading, like, oh my God, like I may have gotten a grade in this class, but it's like, this is not my fault as to why I got that grade, you know, just making sure colleges understand why I may have the grades that I have. And also, it's just made me think of like how hard is college? Like, is it even worth it at this point? Because like, I'm basically going to be teaching myself, you know, like not like a professor's going to be teaching me in person. So it's like, should I just go on my own type of way and just self-teach myself, or do I just actually go to college? But I think it's made me just a little scared, because it's like, oh wow, like I kind of rely on my parents a lot. Like, can I really do this independently? You know, I'm gonna be in a class with 50 people. Is the teacher gonna know me? Like, just things like that. It's made me a little, like, I don't know what the word is, but like, oh my God.
Yeah, maybe a little more cautious.
Yeah.
Sophia?
I think change has, I mean, I'm a junior, so I haven't thought too much about like where I'm applying or anything, but I think change has always been something that kind of scares me and makes me a little strict. And the whole transition from in-person school to online school and adjusting to home life, that was such a big change for me. And I feel like that was definitely hard. And so that kind of made me think of, if this was hard and I'm still going to the school that I've been going to for however, like 12, however many years, like what's the change going to be like from switching schools to go to a completely different place without my parents, who, yes, I depend on a lot, without the friends that I've known for my whole life, without everything that I'm used to. I guess it made me realize that change can be harder, that there are definitely really good aspects about it, but at the same time, it's so hard. And it made me realize that like, it is a lot, and it's just something to get used to.
Great.
Yeah, I could go. So I go to boarding school on a campus in the middle of nowhere in Massachusetts. And so I always thought like, oh, I want to go to college kind of in a town, because I've already done the in the middle of nowhere, and I miss being able to just leave campus and go somewhere. There's actually nowhere to go. But then COVID happened, and I live in New York City, and so I'm very much in the city, and I realized how much I also depend on my out time space and like being in an area and like a field or like somewhere where I can walk without seeing an industrial building or something on every corner or hearing a siren everywhere I go. And so definitely something I realized is like, yes, while I might want to be able to go to a town on the weekend or something, or have somewhere to go, I also need a real campus feel.
Good. Alice, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah. COVID, although I'm a junior, so I haven't necessarily thought about what specific colleges I'm going to apply to, it definitely changed how I'm thinking about college. I was always planning to leave the house and go away, maybe really far, but COVID has definitely cemented that, spending time with my parents 24/7 for a large part of the day. And definitely thinking college as more of a fresh start to a new experience, as most of my high school experience has been kind of stripped away. So it definitely changed my perspective towards college.
Good point.
Yeah. Awesome. Allie?
I think it's kind of almost forced me to look at schools that I would have maybe never considered, because since I'm doing everything online, I don't necessarily, I'm a junior, so now I've not really gotten the chance to tour campuses. So I'm really going off the internet. So it's given me the opportunity to look at other schools that I probably would have not looked at.
Anyone else?
Well, yeah. It hasn't really changed like what colleges like I want to apply to, or like what my general goal is, but it's probably gonna change like how I think about how I'm gonna approach, you know, like a college. I don't know. Well,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm not quite sure how to like say it. Like, I don't know. It'll change my approach to like a certain situation.
Yeah.
I've thought in a similar way to Vivon. It hasn't really changed my college decision too much, or where I plan to apply, but it's made me further consider my approach and my relationships with teachers, letters of recommendation, my extracurriculars, stuff along those lines.
How about with regards to testing and the ACT, SAT, so a lot of colleges have become optional, test optional. Do you have any thoughts on that? They just took away, I guess, subject tests, thinking about college in that way. I think that's a good thing, bad thing? You think there should still be testing? Do you think it's unfair? Yeah, Matthew.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Matthew.
Oh,
Then
Miles, go for it.
Okay, go ahead,
You got
Matthew.
it. Okay. Yeah, I was lucky enough. I took my SAT right before COVID hit. So in that regard, it was interesting to see how schools kind of adapted to that in terms of making them like optional or things like that. But in the college application process, I feel like a lot of schools were depending more obviously on the essays and to see like who the applicants really were. And in my opinion, I feel like that's better because you get to see more of the student for who they are outside of academics as well as academics when it comes to the essays you have to write and the questions you have to answer. And so long story short, I'm in favor of kind of that optional aspect, and I feel like they should keep it for the future, but that's just my opinion.
Awesome, that's a great opinion. Go ahead, Matthew. You were going to say something?
Yeah, like Miles, I also got lucky with the SAT. I took mine back in August. And so I'm done with that, but I have a lot of friends who've had their tests canceled. So I think right now it 100% makes sense for them to be optional, because I think it'd be kind of ridiculous for colleges to expect, students to take it right now, because I think that there are a lot of moving factors for a lot of different people. But I think kind of like looking forward, in the future in terms of whether or not the SAT should remain kind of a big thing for college. I think it's tricky, because I agree with what Miles is saying in terms of, I think that it's nice for colleges to kind of look at students like less of like as their numbers and their scores, and kind of understand them on a more personal level. But I also think that there is some value in kind of like contextualizing everything about them. And so I think it's a tricky situation. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens, because I don't know. We're kind of in a weird limbo time right now. So
yeah, I'm curious to see what happens too. I agree with you. Anyone else?
I feel like they should get rid of the test overall. Like, we do not need the test. The test has been going on since eons. We don't need it. I feel like the test is an opinion-based test. Like, you can't ask me, where do I think the comma goes? Like, because I think the comma goes here, so how are you going to tell me that's wrong? You know what I mean? And then also with the English part, like, the way I interpret the reading is different from how you interpret the reading. So how are you going to, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't tell me this is wrong if I know it's right. Also, a lot of students don't get the same access to tutoring and grammar. They don't know the language. It's really hard, and some schools focus mainly on regions. They don't prepare their students for, the SAT. So some students have a Regents mindset, some students have an SAT mindset, and I think that the grade you get on that shouldn't reflect who you are as a student, because I know so many people who have gotten A's all through high school, and when they took the SAT, they got like an 800 because their nerves and they just forgot everything. So I don't think that one score should determine your whole entire life and where you go and where you're able to apply to.
So Priya, you wanted to say something about that, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think that the whole testing system is, I have just like very strong beliefs on this, because I think that whole system is so outdated. And I think it's just who can afford the best tutors, who can have the, like, put aside the most time for studying, who can, like, because also there are people, like we were talking about athletics before, there are people who put so much time and energy into sports or these other extracurriculars, which are so incredibly important in life. But like, then maybe that affects their score because they don't have enough time to study to get that other score that some people might. And like, that's not taken into consideration. And like, I just think I've heard from so many different people that it's like, oh, I have like 5 different tutors, I have all of this, whatever. And then it's some people who can only have the opportunity to take the test once with no outside help, and it's all on them. And I think that's incredibly unfair. And I think COVID has definitely made that into a bigger thing with more people not having access to those different things. But just in general, I just don't agree with the whole testing system.
Yeah, Some people, kids have to work and they don't, time is a big factor. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sarita.
I was gonna say also some students are not in the same math. Like some people take algebra math, some people take pre-calc. So it's like, how are you gonna test a student on a math that they are not even already? Like it's just ridiculous. And also personally for me, like whenever I take a test, I get really nervous and I tend to forget everything. And I like need to like walk around to get my ideas. And like just knowing that there's 8 minutes on just drives me crazy. And then seeing everyone else finish, it's just like, so much anxiety. But it's just really the math portion. Like I feel like it's not fair because we're not all taking the same math.
Does everyone agree that we should not have any testing?
I feel like there should be testing, but it's really hard to say that you should be able to submit your scores, but you don't have to, because then how are you put against someone who does submit their scores if you didn't? But I think we should figure out some sort of system, because for some kids, testing is a really strong suit for them and they should be able to like show that off if that's something they're skilled in. But for other people, they're just naturally not skilled in taking tests, whether it's they have anxiety or they just forget everything that's happening right before. So I think they need to figure out a way to measure those students against each other without having testing differentiate who's going to get in and who's not going to, but also allow kids who do perform really well in these tests to still submit their scores.
Thank you. You know, we are going to, unfortunately, we have to wrap this up. We have one more minute. This was awesome, you guys.
You guys.
Thank you.